Hey, this is Grady of This Mormon Life, and I just got back from seeing Hacksaw Ridge, which opened up this week in theaters. Hacksaw Ridge is the story of a young man in World War II, raised in Virginia, and he has a strong conviction to follow the commandments of God. He has a firm belief that God doesn't want him to commit murder, and that thou shalt not kill doesn't have any stipulations. That becomes a real big problem as he then finds that the U.S. is in World War II. And many of the young men in his town are going to war, and he feels like it's his duty to go and serve, but at the same time that becomes in conflict with his objection to actually raising and bearing arms and firing a weapon. And it's a big point of conflict for him because those who are with him in boot camp and his superior officers have zero respect for his faith and his willingness to try and, stick to his guns, so to say. Sorry about the pun there. But, he faces court-martial, he goes through all these trials, and people are trying to tell him, just give in, just do it, or quit and leave. Go home. Now, we know that a lot of our latter-day prophet and apostles fought in World War II and fought in the military. And there's no commandment in the LDS faith that says that we can't fight in a war. And these men that served were known for their valiancy and for their honor and for their willingness to serve their fellow men, serve their country, but most importantly, their willingness to serve God. And that's really a big theme that we see here in Hacksaw Ridge, is that Desmond Doss, he wants to serve God, he wants to serve his country, and he wants to serve his fellow man. And the trailer gives a lot of this away, and so I don't think I'm spoiling too much, but one of the things that he becomes known for is his heroism, his bravery, and his willingness to go and to serve and to love those that he fought beside. As a result, he becomes known for his heroism. He goes and does things that no one else will do so that his brothers can come home. And it's a big point in the movie. And even though the trailer tells us a lot about what happens, there's still so much that we don't see, especially when we don't know the outcomes of his fellow soldiers. You get to know those who he serves with, and you see the way that their hearts are softened by his bravery, by his heroism, and by his commitment to keep his faith. And it reminds me a lot of the anti-Nephi Lehis, where they had a faith, they had a history of violence and of anger and bloodlust, and they changed their hearts and they wanted to bury their weapons of war. But then when war came to them through the Lamanites, they wanted to find a way to defend their friends, the Nephites, who let them come and live in their land. But at the same time, they feared that they would break their covenant and return to a life of violence. Now, speaking of violence, Hacksaw Ridge is pretty violent. It's not to the degree of the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan, definitely. But Hacksaw Ridge is rated R for the violence that it's in there. It does a great job of really putting you in that moment. You feel the tension and the anxiety and just the overall stress of being in that situation. Just a glimmer of it. I'm sure it was so much worse to be in it. The language was very mild for a war movie. Only, I think, one PG-13 curse. There is one scene where you've got one of the members of his barracks, and he thinks it's really funny to do pull-ups with no clothes on, and you see him from behind, and then you see him out there doing PT with his hands in front of his genitals, but nothing more is seen, and it's not sexual. It's meant to be comedic in nature, and so keep that in mind. But when it comes to the violence, which is really where the rating itself, I think, derives, it's not gratuitous. It's not overboard. The feeling that I was filled with was overwhelming gratitude towards those people that have served and died and fought heroically to preserve the freedoms of our religion and our faith. And that's a big part of this thing. And when I think about just our lives and the way that we are faced with choices that we need to make, and it's hard. We face ridicule. We face people who think that they know better than us, that we're ridiculous for wanting to stick to what we feel is right. But what we see is that when we do so, when we live our standards, other people notice. And even though in the temporary moment they might think that it's more important for us to do what's fun, but what I have found is that if you constantly live your standards and are consistent, those around you will see the blessings come and they'll respect you for doing what you know is right. And that's a huge theme in Hacksaw Ridge, and we see that the men come to respect him for his beliefs and his faith. So tell us what you thought. Comment down below in the comments. Tell us, did you see Hacksaw Ridge? What did you think? Did you like it as much as I did? Maybe you're opposed to rated R movies. Tell us, are you? Or do you have certain guidelines when it comes to watching media or movies and deciding which content you want to consume? I'd love to just know what other people do. For me personally, I'm not bound by the MPAA. I try to find movies based on content when it comes to what I view, but I want to know what you guys think. So tell us down below in the comments. Also, if you want to see what else we've been doing in YouTube, you can see right here. Right here is going to be our most recent episode of the Third Hour Power. It's a podcast where we talk about the lessons from the Howard W. Hunter Manual. And over here, you're going to see the music video that we made as a family for James the Mormon and his video working. So check that out too. Super fun things over in these areas here. And hey guys, have a good night.